All right, guys. So the class which describes about its state and behavior, the state in sense, we're talking about variables. That may be any kind of variable you're talking about, right? It may be an instance, it may be a local variable, it may be a global variable. We have a class of static variables, okay? And coming to the point of this, the behavior, where actual logic takes place. That is, we are going to write the logic at the method level or the function level, right? But however, to say this right now, how do we define, how do we create a class in the sense, the class which itself a keyboard, right? So let's say I'm going to talk about this, a car, all right? Yeah, we need not to put any parenthesis over there. You just need to put the colon there, right? So a class, so something that, if you're defining a function, the function is an individual piece of code, isn't it? So that doesn't belongs to something, isn't it?
Yeah.
A function is an individual piece, right, of code. That means it does not belongs to something. Let's say you have a requirement where you have to create a functions, where you have to create functions, those more than one function, those that has to belongs to some category, then there is no ideology for the functions. So that is the reason when you write a class. So I'm talking about a car, that the functions I'm going to write it within the function, class level. Those are all functions that belongs to the car, isn't it? Right. Let's say if I'm talking about an engine here, right, self, I'll talk about this self as more important, but remember just for now, right? And I'm saying that, just printing that engine, right? I'm not doing anything so. And we also have like, right, gear. We have this, printing some gear. And we have something called as now acceleration, right? I'll come to the point, what is the self, right? Acceleration. Yeah. See, I have defined 3 functions within the class level. So that means these 3 functions belongs to whom? To the car only.
The car, yeah.
Right? But if I'm writing a function called, let's say, here, let's say define a function, let's say, right? Right, some printing statements, it's a function, right? This function is not belongs to something. It's a globally written function. So this is, we call it as globally written, right? So globally written function. Yes, that means this function can be accessed anywhere in a program for any number of times. There is no restriction for accessing or calling that function, right? But something, we are saying that these functions which belongs to something, right? These cannot normally accessed unless you create an object for the car.
Yeah.
These not normally can be accessed unless you create an object for the car. Then only you can able to access it. I'll come to the point, what is this self? But before that, we are writing a functions, a group of functions together and saying that these functions belongs to this car. In a later point of time, if I'm defining another class called, let's say, animal, but this is not at all related to that. Yes? So if I'm defining any methods like each, right? Let's say I'm a generic each method. Yeah? So this is something, a function belongs to that animal, not at all belongs to the car. But this function is a global function which can be accessed in your classes also, which can be accessed in your animal also if you want it. But you need to understand a class functions, we call it as a method. The only difference between a function and a method is if you write a function within the class level, the function becomes a method. It never becomes a function, right?
Yeah.
If you write a function within the class level, the function becomes a method. It never be a function again, right? So the only difference between this, a function which is an individual piece of code that doesn't belongs to something. So it is something like where you wanted to use that logic for the function. It's a unique which is not something defining to something else. So where you can actually define any functions like this, not a problem. We can write any logic in it. It's not an issue, right? This is something where you thinking that it may be useful for implementing further logic in your class, or in anywhere in your program. But it is something that a globally written function, which is nowhere. No, you cannot say that if you're defining another function over here, right? These two functions, if I write any other functions, so function 2, right? Yeah, then I'm writing any function 2 or something, whatever it's so these two functions not belongs to something. It is an individual piece of code. There is no relationship between this function 2 and this function. So this is normally like generally a globally written functions which can be accessed anywhere. But these are the things. In order to access these functions, I'm no more saying this function. I'm saying that hereafter it's a method, because the function that you define within the function class level, that we call it as a method. It is not a function, right? The only difference between two. So so the point is, in order to access, in order to call these methods, you must have to take the permission from the class. Class is that you must have to create an object for me, right?
Yeah.
If you create an object for the car, you can easily able to access this. So let's say how we can able to access that. Say, let me check out this one. So as I say, if you generally call like this, it is not going to be accessed. It is looking for a global function where you have written it, because it doesn't even know that it is there in the class, right? If I'm running back this code, it's going to be error because it's not going to be find it. Yeah. So basically you have to create an object. But how do we create an object for a class? Simple. Just put a parenthesis.
Okay.
Just put the parenthesis, and the object is created for the car right now. See, as you went to ask this engine method, I wanted to call you. The engine method says that go and ask my class because I belongs to this car. When you went to the car says that create an object for me. Then you can able to access my methods, my variables, everything easily. So you went to the car and you created a car object. You're informing to the car saying that I have created an object for you. Then how do we access this in engine now? So just put a dot there and call this engine method. If you run back, it will be perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. And you need to understand. So if you want to call this gear method again, say again same. Yeah. Gear method, right? If I want to call that acceleration method, right? Acceleration, right? So if you're not creating car object, if you're directly accessing this way, it is not acceptable. Because if I'm trying to run my program, it's going to give an error, because unless you create an object for the car, you cannot access a methods from its car, right? So we call it as, whenever you write self in between this engine, we call it as this instance method. What is that?
Instance method.
Instance method. So don't ever try to do this way. If you do not have a self, let's say something that a universal power, let's say you're doing it print or something. I'm not putting self over there for the power, right? It's a power accelerations, BHP or whatever it is. I don't know exactly. But however, see, this is something, it is not an instance method. So in order to access this particular power method, it is also a method. I'm saying that this is also a method, but this is not an instance method. This is a static method, right? If you wanted to access the static, this we call it as, say, the class or static method.
Okay.
So if you want to access this particular power method, what normally you have to do, the car dot power. You need not to create an object to access the static or class methods. You just need to call directly with the class name. Right?
Okay.
Good to go? Vaibhav?
Okay.
Yeah. So what is the difference then? Why would you not write self, or why would you not just write every function that you define like this without self?
There is a difference. Definitely. There is a difference between self and this, because what is the difference between instance and class method? Say, if you want me to show the difference between these two, first of all, you need to understand the instance variable versus class variables as well. So we have a class variables, we have an instance variables, we have a local variables, we have a global variables, right? We have these many variables. However, if you understand instance versus static variables, then you understand something, difference between this. However, the point is here, see, this particular method is not belongs to the object that you are going to create for the car. It is something that it's only limited to the class. Say somewhere in a situation where you have to keep something to the class, where you have to keep it something for the object. In the situations, in a real time I'm talking about. So where you wanted to also, when you created a static variable, the static variable I'm going to show you right away. When you create a static variable, the static variable is something that it is going to share a one copy for n number of objects. So that means if you change the value of the static variable, it will change globally. That means it doesn't matter how many objects that you are going to create it. It's simply going to change at single place. But if you have an instance variable, if you change it at one object, that effect is going to take on only that object. It's not going to take place on all of the objects that you're going to create it. Fine, we may not be get complete clarity over here right now, but however, I'll make you get clarity all these things. Yeah, one moment. So before we jump into those things, I just wanted to give you a few clarities over here. See, why do we write this self? First of all, what is the meaning of this self? So self is not a parameter here. You need to understand. See, the things that you write it over here, right? This is what you call it as a parameter, right? For the function. Whatever you write in itself or whatever it is, it's a parameter for the function. But if you write it here, self, for the function that is defined in the class level, the self is not a parameter. It is a keyword. What is? It is a keyword. When you, what does it do? What is the meaning of the self in a sense? The self is always refers to the current object, the present current object. The current object is car object. The engine method, which is defined in the car, the self refers that. It's explicitly it's there as a syntax. If you wanted to create an instance method, that means instance method. Instance itself means an object, first of all. Instance method in sense, say, the method that belongs to the object. Yes? Yes or no?
Yeah.
The method that belongs to object. Instance method in sense, instance means an object. The method that belongs to the object. So it says that the self, it's always refers to the current object. So if you're writing a self for the engine, it understands that, okay, I'm an engine method, I belongs to this car object. Okay, I'm a gear method, I belongs to this car object. Explicitly have to write the self keyword in order to create an instance method. Right? If you're not writing a self keyword, okay, I do not belong to this car object, but I belongs to the car class. So when you say that, the class is different, object is different. When you create an object for the class, there's some things which is going to assign to the object. That something is something, we call it as an instance, initializes its instances to the object. We only say that it's going to initialize its instances to the object. When you have a constructed topic, then you will understand more about that. But however, the self is a keyword which always refers to the current object. I'm saying that current object because we have also a super object where we have, right? Don't get messed with that, right? So the self, which is, you have to write it in order to create an instance method. If you write a self, all right. So the self is a keyword which always refers to the current object. So when you're writing a self for the engine method here, that means it understands that the engine method understands that, okay, it belongs to the object. The object is here the class called car, the car object we're talking about. Then when we say that, when you do not write anything as such as a self to the power over here, it understands that, okay, I do not belong to its object. I belong to its a class. So you need to have a difference between these two. Yeah. Yeah. So in order to access any instance methods, you must have to create an object for it, for the class, then only you can access it. I said that this is itself saying that I belongs to the object of car. Then unless you create an object for the car, you cannot access the engine method. Unless you create an object for the car, you cannot access gear method. In the same way, the acceleration method for the power, it is not belongs to, this object. It is belongs to its car. So you need not create an object to access, to call this power method. So basically, but however, I'll come to the point this, but how many objects that we're creating? Pranav and Vaibhav.
You're creating in total or per line?
In total, I mean to say over here till from 20th line to 23rd line, because if you talk about this is also an object, right?
Yeah.
Functions are now the first class objects in C also. So it is also same in here. In fact, I'm talking about this 20th line to 23rd line. How many objects that we have created for the car?
3, I think.
Pranav? Pranav? Pranav?
Yeah, 3. Yeah,
Yeah,
3 objects.
Yeah. So we have created 3. So is it really required to create 3 objects to access? Because there is some situations where I have to call this engine method for 10 times, gear method for 10 times, and I have to keep on moving 10 objects to 5 objects, sometimes, where I have to create so many objects. So is it really recommended to call those methods in this way? In this way? Forget about this power because we're not creating an object for that anyway. I'm talking about these 3. If I want to call the engine method, or if I want to call this gear method or acceleration method, do you want me to create an object this way all the time? Let's say I want to call this engine method for the 100 times. So what do you want me to do? You want me to write a for loop like this? Right? So for I in range about 100, if I say, then you're saying that car of object and engine of this. But can you tell me how many objects is going to be created over here right now? At this place? Sorry. How many objects it's going to create in this for loop? No idea?
I think the 100 objects.
Range is something that, it's a 0, 2, and -1. Definitely it's a for 100 times only. 100 times this, 100 times this for loop is going to loop. I mean, is going to looping up for 100 times. So 100 times it's going to create an object.
Yeah.
100 times you're calling this engine method. Simple as that. Yes?
Yeah.
See, very first time, it comes to this point, it's created an object, and it's calling this method. And the second point, again you're creating an object, again you're calling this method. But it's a stupid, unnecessarily, which is not at all required for you to create those many objects in your memory. Because, see, as a good programmer practice, you must know that, where to write a structureful, without unnecessarily creating, objects in the memory, how efficiently we can actually improve the performance, right? Right? It's useless where you actually create these many objects, but where we can actually do, say, I'm going to delete all of them right now. I'm going to create one single object for the car, but still I'm able to access for any number of times. Is it get it?
Okay. Yeah.
Is it better, right? So what I have to do, simple, see the car, object is created, but let me take into this some variable. Only the variable is, it is a reference. That means this is something that, C here knows the address. C here knows the address of this object car. Yeah? So if the C has an address, that means C is referring to, or C is holding this car object. If I can say C dot engine, very fine. C dot, gear, single object, but no acceleration, same. You want me to call for 1,000 times, I in range 1,000. I'm saying it, nobody call it, but I'm saying it. Unnecessarily, we did not create it anyway, but C dot anyway, C dot engine method. We still not created 100 times objects. It is just a reference to this object. A C can access anything from the object. If it is not just, static method or class method, unless only this instances in the sense we are talking about an instance variables and instance methods, which can access, C can access anything from this object for any number of times without any issues. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very, efficient way of doing this program. Yeah. Good to go.
But aren't you saying that basically C is an object of car then?
Sorry, can you repeat the sentence?
Does this mean that C is an object of car, and then you're basically?
No, we call it as the C is here the reference
of the object. Okay.
In fact, reference variable. C is a reference variable, knows the address of the object car. That means the object is created on the memory. Now object which is referred by the C. Now the C has the complete control of this object. C can access anything from this object, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means if the C can access anything from this object, C can access for any number of times, but the object is only one.
Okay.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Good to go?
Yeah.
Very well. Now let's come to here that if I'm creating a variable called x is equal to 20, you already guys know this is a global variable, yeah?
Yeah.
Very well. What is this?
It's a local variable.
It's not a local. See, the local variables come into the picture only when you create a variable within the method level or function level.
Mm-hmm.
We call it as this class or static variable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when I say here x is equal to 20, all right, we already have 20, right? So we'll make a difference, right? 30, right?
Mm-hmm.
30. And what is this variable?
It's a local variable.
Local variable, right? So how do we create an instance variable in sense self? Self instance current object. Object of variable x is equals to, yeah, some 40, right? Okay. This is, we call it as an instance variable. Yeah?
Yeah.
Above?
Yeah.
Right. So well and good. So let me delete this. We don't want to loop it for 1,000 times to call that engine method. Well, guys, so let me take off. Otherwise, I'll do one thing. Oh, yes. So the point is, if I print here the x value, what is x value here?
It's 20.
What is x value here?
It's 10.
Uh-huh. What is, hold on a second. Yeah. Here, print x. What is x value here?
It's 30.
What is x value here?
It's 40.
If it is 40, I wouldn't even give you that, right?
Oh, wait. Should we call it self.x or just x?
All right, I'll tell you, but however, say if I call the print x, what is this? And if I call the print x here, what is this? Right? And if I call, and one more time, please, x value.
Okay.
See, first of all, can you give me an ideology first? This x, this x, this x, this x, all these x are same?
No.
Why both?
No, they're not the same. No.
They're not the same. At least you know that, yeah? Fine, because it doesn't matter. You know, the where you're creating a variable, it's a more matters for you because it is a kind of variable, all right? We're not talking about what type of variable it is. We're talking about what kind of variable it is. So when you define a variable at this level, at the extreme left index, you know that it's a global variable. The point is you have to be aware that this thing, the class variable or a static variable, both are same, right? When you create at the class level, it's a class level variable, right? But even though if you have the same kind of name for the as a global, yes, guys. So, but still it is a class variable. But I'll talk. There is a special for this. We have a special discussion for this. Don't worry. Only for right now, we're actually going to learn about how do we access things, right? And coming to the point, this is a local because it is local. Because you clearly creating a variable and trying to assign some value to this variable called x, you're trying to print x. We'll come to the point. What is the value over here? So the point is here. So as we said, so what is the x value here? Till this point, it only knows the x value as this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's executing the Python interpreter executing your program from top to bottom. So it never touched this because we are anyway not calling those things. And by the time it's going to reach x is equal to 10, then you're trying to print x. So it only knows this x is 10, right? Then if I ask you the question, what is the 10? What is the value over here?
10.
Why 10? Why not 20? Why not 30? Why not 40?
Because it's a global variable. It's outside it's outside the functions and it's outside the class also.
Right. Because these are all the variables that you declared within the class level. Those are belongs to the car, car class, class called car over here, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you want to access any of these things, there is a special requirement that you have to either use the class name or either you have to create an object for that or something that way. But in order to call this particular x in anywhere situations, right, access that particular x value, you can actually directly call it this way.
Yeah.
Let's say if I do not have this, bad. What is the x value here?
It's not defined.
That means it's going to be an error. Yeah, it's not finding anywhere because it cannot access the class variables this way. There is no such thing as that. So make sure about this way. Yeah, let me run that for you. See, we'll come to the point. See, the first one is x, right?
Yeah.
One thing you need to understand, unless and until that we call a method or a function, it's never going to be called. You need to understand.
Oh, yeah.
So that is the reason I'm not talking about these things. Yeah, we'll talk about this later. But the first thing is this. Then it's enter into the class. Then it's printing this one. The nearest value for this x is 20. That is the reason 20. The first one is 10 because you know that this is a 10. Yeah. Then coming to the point, method never touch, acceleration never touch, power never touch. Again, you're trying to print x, but it only knows the class value, right? Class value, that is 20. Again, you're trying to access x at the global level statement. You're trying to access this one. Yeah. Let's say I don't have this first of all. Now, if I'm running back my program, all 10s.
All will be 10, yeah.
Because if it is not there in the boundaries, it is looking for the global. If it is there in its boundary, right, then it is actually trying to use that variable. Yeah, isn't it, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the way. So let's say I'm taking off this comment. I'm running back. See, right? 10, 20, 20, 10. Here, where is this? Here. This is a statement that is written in the class level. You need to understand, right? So this is not a function or a method. I mean to say it's not a method. So that is the reason it is simply executing it without even calling it. We need not to call this print statement itself to execute it, right? This one also and this one also. And only these things which we have to call it explicitly. Unless you call explicitly, it's not going to be executed, right? Coming to the point. Saying that C is called car this, the C dot power. What is the value here? If you know this, I'm really glad.
I think it'll be 20.
First of all, is it right? So I'm running your program. There is a problem. What is the problem that?
Oh, it's capital C.
Okay. Still there is a problem.
The problem is that
35.
the object of this wasn't created, right? Power.
See, in order to access, this is not belongs to object, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
order to access the power, you should not create any object, in fact. But we have created here, right?
Mhm.
We simply, what we can do here, my bad. We simply say the car. My bad. Now if I'm trying to execute.
Okay.
But why it is 10? Why it is not 20? See, we're getting 10 here, isn't it, guys?
Mhm.
So power BHP, X is 10. We're getting 10. But it is 20. This is 20. But why it is 10?
Because it wasn't a part of the object that we created for the class.
Sorry, my bad. Can you?
I think
Come again?
maybe it's because for power we didn't define any object of the class, and we're not using the object of the class. Therefore, the values defined inside the class are not applicable to it.
Very fine. Say, to give an explanation for this, say, first of all, how do we access class or static variables outside? If you want to access it, how do we access it? First of all, so if you wanted to access this x is equal to 20 outside of my class, how should I access it? And why it is selecting too many things whenever I'm clicking on? So first of all, my question is, how do we access this static or class variables? See, the reason that I define this variable within the class is somewhere I have to use it, right? So if I want to use this x is equal to 20, which is defined, how can I access it at the 36th line, whatever? No.
By calling the object and the class.
So what is this method? First of all, class method, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not an instance method, because we have not created a self. So this particular method which belongs to the car. So if it is a class method, all right, if it is a static method, now how did we access this power? Using class name. But how can we access this one? This is also a class of static variable. It's not a method. In the same way, we can access through the class name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to go. Say
Yeah.
20.
Okay.
Yeah. Now coming to the power. Now you're trying to access x. So if you want to access a static variable, then you must have to say either this way, saying that car dot, then you're trying to referring to the class variable. But if you haven't said this, it is referring to the global.
Okay.
It is looking for the global variable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So understandable. Yeah. You can even say a static or class variables can even access through the the reference of object as well. Say 20. But you cannot access the static or class methods through the reference of object. You must have to access only through class name. Yeah. Very fine. You call the power method, and you know that you got an answer that why we are getting 10 over here, because in order to access this particular variable, you must have to say car.x. That means you haven't said that. So it is simply you're referring to what? Global. Yeah. I think I got again. Let's say let's go and call this acceleration. No, not acceleration, gear method, right? So how do we access the gear method? We know that it's an instance method, right?
Yeah.
The instance methods can be called only through its reference or object creation. Now the C is self an object, it's referring to the object. C dot the gear, right? Perfectly very fine. Now tell me, what is the X value here? Want to run and show you?
It'll be 20.
What happened? Yeah. All right. So how do we access this one then? So I say that this is just instance variables are special variables. That means it belongs to the object. The instances, we say that instances in sense instance variables or belongs to the object. When you create an object, there is a story, and when you understand the constructors, then you understand the complete scenario about that. But however, I'm saying that this is an instance variable. This is not a local variable.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand it. So when you're trying to access X, it is not looking at the object value.
Yeah.
It is looking at the global only, because in order to access this one, we need to say the car.x. We haven't said that.
Mm-hmm.
And simply you're trying to use the X, and it's looking up at here.
Okay.
But what about this? If I wanted to print this, see, instance variable can be accessed only by creation of the object. So if I say the car dot this object dot X, is it very fine? Now if I'm trying to execute it, 20, you're getting it? All right.
Yeah.
One moment. If we call this instance variable got created, and you're printing this. All right. See why there is a glitch right now in the sense. See, this is one object, right? In the object, you're trying to call the gear. This is one object. Remember, in the object, in the same object, you're trying to call the gear. In the same object, you have called the gear, and you have created instance variable called X and assigned 40 value to it. The object that you have created at the 34th line. Yeah. Now the point is, you're creating again an object, new object. When you create a new object, the new instances get assigned. That means this is not yet called. I mean, this particular method is not yet called on this particular object. You understand my point? There are two objects that you have created for the two car only. One object that you have created over here, and you have called on this object only. You have called gear method, right? On this gear method, on this particular object, it is called and it's created. But in order to access this, either you have to use the C as a reference to get it this, right? But you have created a new object again. When you create a new object, on this particular object, have you called the gear method? No, you haven't called it. Have you called it?
No.
I'll repeat my sentence again. See, you have created an object for the car, and we know that there are a gear method, acceleration method, engine method, right? All these things there, right?
Yeah.
And on this, and the first object that we have created, and you're trying to call the gear method. On which object you're trying to call it? On the first object. You called it. When you call the gear object, right? When you call the gear method, this instance variable is getting created. When you call the gear method only, in that sense, the instance variable gets created, right? Now, at the 23rd line, you have created a new object. New object is created. The object has gear method, engine method, acceleration method, all these things, yeah? But you're trying to access X value, but without calling the gear method again on that second object. So how come there is a 40? That is the reason you're getting 10 over here. If I say simple, say here, C dot X 40. But the problem with this is you have created a new object. On this particular object, have you called the gear method again? No.
No.
That is the reason it is not getting created instance variables for this object. Because unless that you call this gear method, instance variable is not getting created.
Okay.
Yes, Vaibhav?
Yeah.
Sure?
Yeah.
You want me to repeat, guys?
No, it's not.
No, it's good.
You want me to repeat, Vaibhav?
No, it's good.
All right then. Thank you. So understand that way, we created an object, then we call the gear method, and it's got created. But on this object, we have not called the gear method. That is the reason it's not able to access the 40. is simple. If you say that c dot x, because you call the gear method on the same object, using c only you're trying to access x, then it's 40, right? If you want to get the 40 over here, what you can actually do, the best thing what you can do is say I can say that something like c1 is equals to car, right? But don't do this way because it's going to be recursive again. C dot gear method, then the object gets created. But
Okay.
it's a kind of recursive. There is no point of stopping for this. Then if I'm trying to say the c1 dot x, then this is going to be 40 definitely. But the problem with this code is, say I call the gear method, the 41th line to 20th line it's going to be jumping off, right? And 21st line it's going to create it, and you're trying to print the gear, and you're trying to create an object for the car, right? You're trying to create an object for the car, and you're trying to call the gear method again. So which gear method? Same gear method. Again, it's going to repeat it for unlimited times. So don't do that.
Okay.
See, that is the reason. See,
Yeah.
it's a recursive kind of exceptions, right? So don't do that. Yeah, good to go. Let me delete all of them. So that is the reason I'm saying that the print off. My bad. It's not say print. There is no say print. That means, so it doesn't even know the x instance variable x is 40 at this particular object. That is the reason it is, instead of taking this one, it's taking this.
Yeah, 20.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right then. Then if I say c dot engine method, you might be knowing this answer. Okay, this is this is good. I think so. Okay, what happens then? Which one it's going to take?
It's going to take 20.
For C dot engine to take, yeah. I think
See, if it is
It'll take
taking
10. Call
20,
engine, right?
the 19th line, I understand that
It'll take
what
10
you're
again.
saying about it. If it is taking 20, then how can I access this? Is there any other ways to access this?
You have to call engine first and then access that.
Yeah.
No. One moment, please. See, the nearest
It's
value
not
for
an
this x is
instance.
30.
It's not
If
an
it is,
instance variable, so it'll take x equals.
yes, it is not an instance variable. It's a local variable.
Yeah.
The nearest value for that is this,
It's
30.
30. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Guys, see,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to confuse you guys, maybe. Something like creating all the variables names are same. So simple like, see, it's a good, even if you represent in a different variables names and trying to access them, it's okay. So this is something like when we put in a hardware, then you're actually going to get a lot of questions, a lot of thinkings. Yeah. Yes, guys. So the coming to the point. So have you understand complete scenario?
Yeah.
You know that how to access static variables. You know how to access instance variables. You know how to access local variables, global variables, right? Don't ever get, no? Going wrong track again.
Yeah.
I have
Yes,
one
go.
question.
Yes.
In the function gear, in line 23, if I wrote, let's say if I wrote car bracket dot, if I write self x over there, self dot x, will that
Even
be
if you
wrong?
write self x, say self dot x, normally it is looking for that only because it's not yet created even, because the self, the car object of x value is 20 only. See? Oh, wait a moment. I have to put it in parentheses. Where is this? This one, right?
Yeah.
The gear method? Yes, it's 40. I'm sorry about 40. Yeah. So because it's a current object, the current object is that you have called only the created this one. Instead of creating a new object, you have called only the current object is only that one right now. So the current object of x is this, the nearest value is this 40. then you're getting this. Wonderful that. Thank you. Yeah.
Mhm.
But if you create explicitly again the object of that particular car, then it is not going to, unless you call the gear method for that particular, uh, unless you call that gear method on that object, it is not going to be accessed this particular value. But this is okay. Very fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Wonderful. So, and one more thing, if I want to create an instance variable at global level, how can I create it? See, we just called, we just used all the variables, we just called all the methods, right? But however, I wanted to create instance variable from outside the class. How can I create it? Simple as, do we have such c.y? Do we have such?
No.
Mhm.
No. Over. And simply creating an instance variable from outside. But C
Okay.
is just a referring to the car object.
Mm-hmm.
Object of y, that is going to be an instance variable. Then it's this. Yes? Wonderful. So let's say if you want to create a global variable from a method, if you wanted to create a global variable from a method, what do you need to do? All right, you may not be knowing this, however, so let me create that for you. Now, let's say there is a keyword called global itself, right?
Yeah.
Let's say y, I'm saying it, and y is equals to 40 or whatever it's, let me say some 100. Yeah, I'm printing y, definitely is going to be y only. See, my point is here, coming to the point here. Say, if I say the print, sorry, we created in the acceleration method, right? Unless you call the acceleration method, it is not going to create a global variable y, isn't it so?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless you call this acceleration method, there is no chance of creating this global variable y. Yeah. So what I
Yeah.
have to do, simple. First of all, c dot acceleration. Now the actual global variable y gets created. I'm saying it's a global. I can directly access it this way. All right. So some mistake over here. 100.
Okay.
So directly p print of y. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Directly accessing. If it was a, let's say, a class variable or an instance variable, we cannot even access this local variable. But I'm saying that I have created a global variable within from a method. Once you call this method, the variable gets created. Then after you can actually happily use this a variable directly without any restrictions. That same thing like an X that we have created at the 11th line. Yeah,
Okay.
good to go, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is all about variables, have seen. Same thing like, it works same thing for strings and everything. It doesn't matter what type of variable that you're using it, right? Only for we are accessing, we're talking about an access limitations or whatever. So coming to the point now, let's say I'm taking another one, bad. Right. Test code, let's say yeah.
Okay.
And I'm saying that here the def. Don't want this. Is it correct first of all?
No, because I think you haven't defined y count in the beginning. In the
Yeah,
class,
you made that into a
new comment.
yeah, comment.
Where exactly? Here?
Yeah, third line.
Or you want me to check out this? You already created over here, right? Fact instance variable.
Okay.
Okay.
That is the reason I commented this. Yeah. So is it correct? The 80 statement is correct or not? First of all.
Wouldn't it be self dot y count? We have when you're defining
Yeah.
it. Or
The
oh, yeah.
self is only applicable for within this method. You cannot use the self outside.
Yeah, I guess it's correct.
See, we're creating an object. On this object, have we called the method one? On this object, this is a new object.
Yeah.
This is a new object, right?
Yeah.
Did we call this method one on this object? No, we haven't called it. We called the method one on this object, right?
Yeah.
We haven't called this method one on this object. So how come y count variable is going to create it? There is no such thing, yeah?
Yeah.
Till here it is correct. There is no point. If I run it, say, there's a problem at this point, yeah? You understand point? Haven't called the method one on this particular object because this is a new object. On this object, using say, I call the method one, and then I'm able to access the y count, and I'm able to print it. It's definitely fine. But the point here, I haven't called the method one on this object. That is the reason I'm not able to access y count. If I'd taken out this, it would be very fine. Okay. No problem. Yeah. Now the point is here. So I'm trying to execute this, the program. Then we don't have any print statements over here. And coming to the 11th point, you're trying to increment the static variable, as I said, right? 1, right? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
And you have to say this is a class statement. That means you're trying to increment by 1. It has got incremented. Then you're trying to increment again. You're trying to print it. That is the reason 2. Yeah?
Yeah.
So, yes, guys?
Yeah.
And coming to the point, at the 14th line, you're creating an object. You call the method 1. You're trying to increment the y count to the 1. Then it is definitely 2 because the y itself 1 initially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? And the point is here, you're trying to access the y count that is 0. Right? Now the point is, if I can say, if I can create, so we already said the y count is 1 by accessing it, isn't it so? So let me create the C1 is equals to the count, the numbers, my bad, count numbers, my bad, right? This is a new object, right? C1 dot method 1, right? And this the print of C1 dot y underscore count. What is the value here? What is the value here? And if I can access the C1 dot x, what is that? Count. What is the value here? I can definitely access the, the class variables using reference also, but I cannot access the class method using a object reference. But I can access the class variable using object reference. Object reference, this is an object reference, this is an object reference, right?
Okay.
So tell me this right now, the 20th line, we're creating another object. I'm trying to call the method one on this object, very fine. I'm able to access this, very fine. I'm able to access this one also. The point is, what is the value here, what is the value here?
If you can go up a little.
See, I'm trying to define a.
It's 2 and 2, right?
It was 2 and 2 for this. So if I run it back, let's say, again 1.
4, okay.
That means
it's already
only,
two.
yeah. The point is, but because see here, the count values keep on increasing. It's not, it's completely taking the updated value. But when you see this 1, it was 2, but it is still 1 because the instances only gets affected on that particular object. If you change, if you're trying to change the value of y count on this object, but if you created a new object, the y value is still only, y count is still only 1. But the static variable, wherever you update it, wherever you change the value of this count, it's affected everywhere. I mean, it's going to affect it on the global wise. It's a, something like we can say that the static variable shares a unique copy. Copy of all instances. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Vaibhav, you asked me this question. Hope you got an answer. Yeah. And one last point, guys. We'll tell that and close the session for today. See, guys, if I say the function or anything, all right? If I say self, print some, let's say, self. What does it mean? So by the time that I call this method, right? So you want me to pass or don't want me to pass?
Pass it.
Now, say, for the functions, if you write self, it will act as like a parameter only, but not keyword. But not keyword, guys. That means self is not a keyword for the function. It is simply a parameter. That means you must have to pass something.
Okay.
But here, whenever we're calling an engine method, are we passing anything to the engine method? See, anywhere? We called engine method here. Have we passed anything? No. But here, if you write a self for the function, I'm not talking about a method, right? The method is only when you write the function. If you write in the class level, that becomes a method, okay?
Okay.
I don't come to this point again, okay? These are the methods, these are the functions. And for the function, if you write a self keyword, it is not a keyword. It is acting as like a parameter. That means you must have to pass as an argument to make it satisfy. Otherwise, it's never understand what is the self for that. Right?
Okay.
Yes, guys. It's simply the function you're going to call, and you're passing in an argument as an integer. You simply you're printing that integer itself. Even if you want, you can check it out. See.
Yeah.
If I don't pass it, there is an error.
Yeah.
So the self is not a keyword for the function. The self is a parameter. That means you must have to pass an argument to satisfy the function. Right? Does it go, guys?
Yeah.
But if it is a method, if you're writing a self, that means it is not a parameter. It is a keyword. There is a special meaning for that. It's always refers to the current object. So if you want this engine must have to expect some parameters, you can say this way. Sorry. Yeah. That means in order to call this engine method, you must have to pass 2 parameters, not 3. The self is a keyword over here. Right, guys?
Yeah.
Vaibhav, Pranav?
Yeah.
All right. So any questions to me for today's session?